called Abram out of the Ur of the Chaldees, which was a city that dispersed from the Tower of Babel, which was actually the generation of Noah, which was the same as the generation of Adam. It was flesh, it was man, because Noah revealed his nakedness. So all this builds up to the point of Babylon. So when God called Abram, he was a man that believed God, and it was accounted him for righteousness, and he became the father of faith. The house of God was starting its foundation in Abram. So we have Abram, the father of faith, Isaac, the promised son, and then Jacob, the redeemed son, and then Joseph, the fourth son. He was the promise of everything. He carried the garment with many colors, the rainbow color. He was the provision for the nation. He was the symbol of the fourth man. So Jesus Christ is the fourth man. Now, if we look at the prophecy that Ezekiel gave, he is within the time of captivity. He's the one that stood at the river and also saw the heavens opening up. And he's the one that saw the four creatures, the man, the ox, the eagle, and the lamb, which is four earthly animals standing on wheels within wheels. What's wheels within wheels? Cycles, beginnings and endings. The heaven was opening up to show the preparation of what is happening on earth. And what was it? A man, Noah, an ox, Abraham, an eagle, David, and a lion, Jesus Christ, who became the Lamb. And then Revelation talks about the wrath of the Lamb. I thought he would say the wrath of a lion, but the day of vengeance is the wrath of the Lamb. And it was upon those people that crucified him, because Revelation 1 says, the Son of Man comes on the clouds of heaven, and those that pierced him saw him. This is a vision. They didn't see him, they felt the brunt of it. But for those who look for his appearing, Hebrews 9, he will come a second time without sin unto salvation. That's when the victorious Christ, the rider on the white horse, is returning with the saints, and that is when everything is going to be wrapped up in him. That is the final returning of the Lord. So we cannot mix up the coming of the Son of Man and the returning of the Lord of glory. When Christ came, there was a total reformation. Before Christ, he said the people that sat in darkness, it was a dark period. Jesus came as the morning. Hosea says he's going to come to us as the morning. Joy to the world, the Christ has come, and God announced the day. So you cannot mix these times. You cannot mix light and darkness. And this is the whole problem with Israel. When light came, they chose darkness because they couldn't see and they couldn't hear. From Abraham right unto Jesus Christ, this was the time of testimony. Abraham was the father of faith with the foundation stones, and Moses was the builder of the house. But Isaiah, he calls out and he says, heaven is my throne, earth is my footstool. Where is my house and where is my rest? Why? Because they messed up the house. From Adam, there was a battle for seed. And the purpose for a seed is a body. And the purpose for the body is for the spirit to indwell a man. Because just before the flood, God said, my spirit cannot forever dwell with man. I have to start anew. This is why Noah's generation is actually also a fallen generation. He is presented with a crow, the raven, because his generation went down to Babel. And Abraham's generation had two seed lines, a royal seed line and a seed line in the natural generations, which are supposed to be a royal priesthood. They were supposed to be a kingdom of priests. But what they did, they said, we want a king. And the whole situation from Adam to Christ is God doesn't want us to get settled in this fallen situation. That is why he, the King of Kings, came down and he fought the small King of Kings, which is depicted in the book of Daniel, the whole story of Daniel, because Daniel takes place in Babylon, which is the greatest kingdom that ever was on the earth. And God's people, because they didn't receive the word they were given, they were taken to Babylon. And that marked the beginning of their end. Moses sang them a song, and the song was only sung in Revelation 15. He says they sang the song of Moses and the song of the Lamb. It was sealed all these years. Now in Babylon, God says to Daniel, you must seal it. And all these seals, for a second time, God said, I don't want to bring it. Just before Deuteronomy 32 and the song, there's this scripture in 29:29. The secret things belong to our God, but those things which are revealed belongs to us and to our children forever, that we may do all the words of this law. When things are sealed, it means God does not want to reveal it. He doesn't want it to happen. But because of their sin and transgression, the seals were broken. Why was the seals broken? Well, they crucified their Messiah. The worst is they allied with Rome to do it. But the minute Christ was crucified, it belongs to us to know everything. So this is where we need to understand how to divide times and seasons. Because in science, they teach us, if you are in a point, you can't see nothing, you are in it. If you are in one dimension, if you look this way, you'll see a point, that way you'll see a point, and that's all you can see. You can't see the dimension because you are in it. So if you add 2 dimensions, length and breadth, you will only see one dimension. It doesn't matter which side you look, you can only see one other dimension. So when you're on 3 dimensions, you'll see 2 dimensions. But whoa, everything we see is in 3 dimensions. Because if you add time to 3 dimension, you have 4 dimension. So we are struggling to understand time because we are in time. We can only observe time, but we can see 3 dimensions. So the minute you step into the Spirit and you can see from the beginning to the end, then you can understand times. Now this is what happens in the Bible over and over. The word is Spirit breathed. So Moses, when he said, show me your glory, God said, my goodness will pass by you and I will show you my grace and my mercy. Noah was the first one that found grace. But in Jesus Christ, grace came and we found mercy. And all of this is God's goodness from beginning to the end. Because he says, I am the beginning and the end. He does not have a beginning and an end. Beginning and an end is a full cycle. God is the beginning and the end. And this is where Adam dumped us in. But God is not going to leave his creation. He's going the full cycle of time with us. And all these things that happen in time, these are the periods that God works it out. And in the fullness of time, God sent forth his Son, born of a woman, born under the law, to redeem them that were under the law and bring salvation to the whole world. Because in him, everything under the earth, everything on earth, and everything in heaven comes together. And then he ushers in the kingdom. But the kingdom could not function because people still held on to the law. Christ fulfilled the law and the prophets, but they were sitting in Moses' seat. Matthew 23, and they held on. So now another pattern kicks in, and it goes right to the total destruction of the law and the Judaistic world. Now, when you take the point where Daniel came into Babylon, this period actually started, and it only ended 40 years after the cross in 70 AD. This is one period of time, the removal of the old. But when Christ came, it was their day of visitation. He came to them first, but they didn't receive it. Now, after he was risen, he said the kingdom must be preached to the whole known world. And the whole known world at that time was scattered to the ends of the earth. That is why the gospel had to go to the ends of the world. That is why we had the missionary journeys before the end of Judaism could come. Judaism had to end. The law had to be finished. What the prophets prophesied had to be totally fulfilled before the end could come. Now, the biggest mistake that the church world has made is to interpret these things with a natural mind and try to understand time in the natural mind. You cannot. Paul went to preach. He was called to the Gentiles, but he always landed with the Jews. He started with the Jews, and then he was thrown in prison, and then he went to the Gentiles, till he finally said, I wash my hands now. Whoa! Pilate washed his hands and he said, I'm not guilty of what's happening here. Now Paul washed his hands and he said, I'm not guilty of what's going to happen now here, because this is the final end. And this is the coming of the Son of Man on the clouds. And this is the book of Revelation. Now I just want to say something. All of this happened in the time of Rome. We need to understand, and we're going to go into the depth of it. So Rome is no more an empire. It's only ruins. You cannot change history. You cannot change these times. So we need to hear what the Spirit says. And we cannot force these prophecies into our time and get confused. Because when the Bible talks about the end of the world, it's the end of the second world. The first world was destroyed with water. The second world preserved for fire. But Jesus brought a new world. He says, glory be to God in the church, a world without end. And the world without end is going to be consumed back when everything is fulfilled. Then it's the ages to come, and we're going to go right on to perfection that God actually determined right from the beginning. So I want to ask something now. Why do we even have a Bible? Most people get saved without a Bible. The New Testament church didn't have a New Testament. The Old Testament church didn't even have scrolls because they wrote it. Why do we have a Bible? Why was so many people killed? So that we can have a Bible in our hands, so that we can understand the eternal purposes of God worked through time. And one of the major turning points is the book of Daniel.